Traders are suffering, pensioners are suffering, drivers are suffering, contractors are suffering, civil servants are suffering, and farmers are suffering. Fishermen are suffering, and industries are suffering. Artisans are suffering, and kayaye are suffering. The disabled are suffering, and men are suffering. Women are suffering, and children and Ghanaians as a whole are suffering.
Economy with market determination of prices. Exchange rate movements are the most important indicator of underlying macroeconomic fundamentals. As the saying goes, when in doubt, observe the exchange rate. The lesson from history for governments is that you cannot manage the economy with propaganda. In fact, you can engage in all the propaganda you want, but if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you.
You will recall that I stated in 2014 that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. That was true then, and it is true now. It is 100% correct. So if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But it is warped logic to jump from that to a conclusion that if there is depreciation in your currency, then the fundamentals must be weak. Do you understand the logic? It is very warped logic. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But if the exchange rate moves, you cannot jump to that conclusion that the fundamentals are weak. That defies logic.
The yield levy is also going to help with the fiscal consolidation effort and reduce the debt levels of our country. And that also means that we are going to see an improved economic ratings and not returning to the International Monetary Fund, which is the only solution our friends.
Welcome back. This is the newspaper review segment of the show. Many thanks for joining us. And these are the topics we are discussing for the morning. Intense Israeli strikes in South Gaza City. The Daily Guide newspaper with this one. Resign to save yourself and government. Atachian to Furiata. And then our third topic for conversation. Transport fares to go up by 30% from 22nd January. Transport fares to go up by 30% from 22nd January. The Insight newspaper has captured this morning. This story, I beg your pardon. This morning, I've been joined by Honorable Inusa Husseini, former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Happy New Year, Honorable.
Happy New Year to you.
I trust you're fine.
I'm good.
How is Tamale?
Oh, Tamale
is I know you spend majority of your holiday
in Tamale.
Yes.
Yeah, Tamale is not that bad. Hamatan is almost receding. We are trying to put out actions together, or acts together, to say so, and then to see how we can prepare for this year.
Great. Sarista.
Senior.
International fisherman.
Yeah, I want to know.
I'm just a fisherman.
That's how you describe yourself.
International fisherman.
Very, very local fisherman.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you, bro.
I trust you're fine.
I'm good. At least I'm happy to see you. It's been a while.
Wow, a very long time.
I see.
You know, I used to worry him so much.
So much. Long time.
Appear on TV.
And that's how he has always been identifying himself, a fisherman.
Right. Without further ado, let me also mention that Elvis Bota will be joining us shortly. I've spoken to him. He's actually on his way, but we'll start the conversation. Once he joins us, he'll also contribute to the discussion. We are live from our studios down number 40 Swanika Street in Abilinkpi, but you can also watch us on YouTube. Yes, youtube.com/Pan-African Television. We are streaming live there. Join the conversation. Leave your comments. Also, text lines has been displayed on your screens. Make sure that you contribute to today's discussion. Now, our first topic: intense Israeli strikes in South Gaza City. Intense Israeli strikes in South Gaza City. It says residents of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza say they have faced one of the most intense nights of airstrikes since the start of Israel's offensive. Videos showed flames light up the sky as the sound of Israeli bombings and gunfire reverberated across the city. Meanwhile, medicines are being sent for Israeli hostages held by Hamas in exchange for more aid for Palestinian civilians under a Qatar-mediated deal. The White House says Qatar has also been overseeing very serious, extensive discussions about a possible new hostage release deal, which were joined by a U.S. envoy. This is the loudest sound of armed clashes between Israeli soldiers and Palestinian fighters that I've ever heard. Yasser Zazouk, who has been sheltering at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis with his family, told the BBC, "This is the first time we saw such scenes. We were in terror. All the kids were screaming and crying," a local journalist, Tariq Dalan, said. There is a state of panic among the displaced people in the hospital. People are running away from this area towards the west, but nobody knows where they are going and what his fate will be. Israeli tanks were said to be just meters from the hospital. Wow. A woman in southern Gaza who did not wish to be named said children could not sleep because of the sounds of missiles. "We are living in fear and terror," she told the BBC, adding that many of the children had begun to wet themselves out of fear. "We fled under fire at dawn today. We carried a few blankets and walked for 5 kilometers to reach the entrance to the city of Rafah. And now we are in the street, not knowing where to go." This is the entire story as captured by the Daily Guide newspaper. It is quite a surprise to me that despite the fact that the International Justice Court is hearing the genocidal case that the South African government is making against Israel, such bombings, will still be ongoing. It is very much of a surprise to me. But I would let Honorable Yunusa Hussaini start the conversation for us on this topic. Honorable.
Yes, so thank you so very much. And let me say good morning to our cherished viewers and Happy New Year. Christmas is gone. I wasn't here during Christmas. Belated Happy Christmas to all of you. And I wish that this year brings us peace of mind, prosperity and happiness. And the favors of God touches everybody and makes that life more meaningful for us. The Gaza debacle and the conflict between Israel and the Hamas has attracted the attention of the whole world. I recall that the Western countries in Western Europe were united in calling for a ceasefire of a sort because of the level of devastation and the destruction of civilian lives. Nowhere in Gaza, whether you talk of northern Gaza or southern Gaza, is safe. Initially, the Israelis painted a picture that southern Gaza will be safe, but when people were trooping there, they decided bombing there, and that is in accordance with their avowed aim of rooting out the Hamas. Many watchers have said that Hamas is not, I mean, an organization. It's an idea, and idea springs out of the Intifada, and so it will be difficult. As many as you kill Palestinians, many Hamases will come up, will take their place, and so people have called for another approach to dealing with the issue between Palestine and Israel. Indeed, it is safe to say that even some Israelis in Israel have raised issues with the way the Israeli government is dealing with the issue, and believe that their collective security is being jeopardized by the action of the Israeli government. And so I think that the Israeli government, which is the most right-wing government in the history of Israel, is pursuing an agenda that clearly borders on genocide, crimes against humanity. And that is why South Africa took the matter to The Hague, the International Court of Human Rights, to press claims against Israel in the way it is prosecuting the war against Gaza, has exposed civilian lives to great danger, has made everywhere unsafe, have bombed hospitals, have bombed schools, have made, it placed an embargo on essential goods and commodities entering Gaza and making the people, using hunger as a weapon and all that. So really, I had an opportunity to read the claims of the South African government at The Hague, and I think that what South Africa is looking for, in the sense, what we call declaratory judgments, that look, we should declare that what Israel is doing constitutes crimes against humanity. We should put an obligation on Israel not to destroy evidence that might be needed in order to prosecute those who are engaging in genocide. We should remind them of its obligations under the treaty, the war treaty and all those things. So clearly, I think that we're all waiting with bated breath to see how the case proceeds. As we speak, there is a renewed attempt to have supplies enter Gaza. Yesterday, 2 planes flew from Abu Dhabi into Egypt, and they are being sent straight to Gaza to be able to assuage the humanitarian sufferings in Gaza. And people suspect, many international observers and watchers suspect that this latest attempt will result into the release of hostages, even though Hamas is reporting that because of the heavy bombardment of Gaza, some of the Israeli hostages have died. But I just think that the rule of proportionality is not being obeyed in this particular case. The way Israel is prosecuting the matter clearly is not proportionate to the 7th October attack on Israel by Hamas. Yes, the attack was unprovoked. The attack came as a surprise, but clearly what Israel is doing cannot in any way be equated to the attack. And I think that Israel is punishing the civilian population, people who had absolutely nothing to do with the attack, who do not probably support Hamas, is punishing them for the acts of Hamas. And that again contravenes international law, because this is vicarious responsibility for the commission of an offense for which you have no hands. And just like Israelis are complaining that yes, they have no problem with the Palestinians. In fact, some of them work closely with the Palestinians, and that what Israel is doing against the Palestinians is exposing them to harm again. So vicarious responsibility for the acts of a government. And so I think the international community and the UN has condemned. When the UN General Secretary uttered his views on what was going on between Israel and Palestine, the Israelis took offense. The former UN Commissioner for Human Rights said, look, he was leaving. He was leaving that area because what Israel is doing is totally unacceptable. But somehow the United States of America, unfortunately, is solidly behind the Israelis. And if you have a world power, we are in a unipolar world. And so if you have a world power like the United States solidly behind the Israelis, they can act with impunity. And that is exactly what they are doing.
Thank you very much, Honorable Inusa. Mr. Resta.
Yeah, at least what can I say? The only thing I can say is that the hypocrisy of the world has come to play in this Israel-Palestinian war. Because in the first place, it was not supposed to be a war. I think in November I was in Cairo and was quite close to the. That's not too far away from the point of action. And so our tour guide was talking to us about the fear they themselves were having because of the closeness of the place.
Proximity, yeah.
And the possibility that it also would have economic impact on basically all the countries that are around. We are talking about Qatar providing supplies, and that is cost to Qatar. Basically, all economic activities in Palestine is gone off. It's basically on a standstill. The world need to come to the realization that in an effort to fight terrorism, if you apply this level of force, you harden a certain group of people who would want to take that position. Because in all the effort to fight terrorism, what has happened is that terrorism is rather spread across the world. Because when the issue of Iraq came up, and then there was this bombing of Iraq because Saddam Hussein was supposed to have been hiding some weapons of mass destruction. What happened? You had people who felt that they needed to defend Iraq. And so their target was American installations. And because they could not enter US directly to cause harm, wherever they had American installation, realized that they started attacking them. So what is happening in Palestine now, if I have a friend who is an Israeli and we have a business together, probably some Palestinians or some Hamas people or people who are that orientation, they may not even be Palestinians, because we had instances where Ghanaians joined ISIS. So it means that it becomes easier for them to recruit people who are sympathetic towards their cause and all over the world. So they begin to spread, because they now have basis to now more like spread the gospel that, look, we are a suffering people because of our vulnerability, and that we are being dominated and we are being killed, and so we need people to support us. And that is how the terrorist group have been recruiting people into their fold, because they create the situation that makes people want to even die to help them, to help save or avenge their situation for them. So the challenge we have now is to have a world that sits together and be able to decipher between a war against innocent civilians and an attempt to eliminate an ideology, which ideology doesn't reside in any group of individuals, but it keeps moving from one person to the other, because once one leader is out, another leader emerges. And probably the new leader that emerges becomes more radical than the leader that had been removed from there. So, yes, the situation of October 7th, when the Palestinian or Hamas attacked Israel, was condemned globally. Nobody was happy about it. Innocent people were killed. But you don't go back and kill. Two wrongs don't make a right. You don't go back to kill some other innocent people and believe that that was in equal measure to the people who were killed and people who were held hostages. like they were saying, if you want the people returned, and you are basically bombarding everywhere, not knowing where your own people have been kept, you are likely to drop bombs on your own people
yeah,
and kill them. So they may not come back. So the casualty level is not only with the Palestinians, the Israelis themselves are suffering. And you see, I saw something around the Mexican border with California. You realize that people move from Mexico to come and work in US and go back. So there were buses that were moving from Mexico into US and going back. Now, you have basically the same situation where there are people who live in Palestine and yet come to Israel to work and then go back to Palestine. Now, that relationship is far gone because you basically you have destroyed that area, that stretch where people are supposed to be living together. Israeli and Palestinian, from our biblical understanding, are just brothers from the same parents, except that they have different fathers. They are brothers from the same parents whose descendants are. So these are basically relatives that are disagreeing on who owns what land, and so are fighting over it. It should be possible for the world to sit with Israel and Palestine. We should be able to resolve this problem. No, they cannot continue to fight forever. They cannot continue to fight forever. The world is looking onto this, and lives are being lost. I've seen some evidence where there's been an attempt to suggest that hospitals and things are being used as places. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos. Israel tried to show some videos where hospitals have equipment and guns and all of that, and they have used that as reasons why they are destroying hospitals and schools and other installations, because they believe that those are areas where ammunitions are being kept, bombs and other things are being kept, and that is how the Hamas people have been operating. But whatever the case is, how do we deal with the Hamas situation? How do we deal with many other terrorism that we are encountering today? Today, Niger is not having peace because of the fallout from the Libyan war, where people were armed to fight. When the war was over, they still had the arms. They have no use for the arms, so they have to look for places where they could use the arms, and they moved into the Sahel area, which was quite close to Libya. So they are in Mali, they are in Burkina Faso, they are in Niger. These are countries that are neighbors to us, and so you realize that at some point we were thinking about how to protect our northern borders because of the fear that those terrorists may move into our country easily through our northern borders. So it tells you that when these things happen, nobody is at peace, because definitely there will be people who are sympathetic towards the cause of the Palestinians, and they may arm young people in Palestine to fight back. When there is ceasefire and those young people have arms with them and they have nothing to do, they may either sell the arms in order to make money, and when they sell the arms, those arms won't go back to the US. Those arms won't go back to the European countries. They'll find their way into West African and other poor countries, and people will use that to perpetrate crime. People who have guns, if there are no war situation, may use them to rob you and me, because the level to which we are releasing arms into the system because of some of these wars that are being fought is to the detriment of the very ordinary person who probably have nothing to do with the war, who may be living very far away from the war, but because the arms will transit, it may get into wrong hands in those countries, and many other things could happen. So it's beyond international relationship, beyond international laws, beyond issues of human rights, beyond issues of genocide that we are talking about. There is a long-term effect, because arms will be released into the system, and people will get those arms, and they will do something with it. The people may have grenades that they may get to places, and other explosives, they may get to places, and they may release them. I think when these things started, our neighboring Cote d'Ivoire experienced some terrorist attack in some resort, because at some point, anywhere especially the ISIS group find white people gathered, they would want to cause destruction. People go to places, they open fire and kill people. Nigeria has had their fair share of this terrorist attack. And these things are happening because they are fallout from wars. The terrorists we are seeing, most of them are fallout from wars that were unnecessary. And because it is war situation, those who are in arms trade found it convenient to sell arms to people in order to make their money. So people put profiteering over the lives of human and humanity. And like I say, children are suffering. Schools have been disorganized. Life had completely gone off in Palestine now. They need to rebuild. Once schools are off, it means that you've delayed the future of some young people. Some schools may not come back again because they've completely been destroyed. So we are basically bringing innocent people in Palestine on a standstill. It is okay to see how best to deal with acts of terrorism, but in doing so, we need to be measured to ensure that innocent people are not impacted. Let's see what the International Court of Justice in Hague will say about it. I've listened to some submission that South Africa made that I think a lot of people applauded. We will see where it will come to, and whether or not we will be able to enforce that and probably call for a ceasefire, because there's been many attempts to call for a ceasefire. We have not been successful. Qatar is trying to intervene, and from what we are gathering, US is supporting Qatar to have that intervention. Let's hope we are able to get some intervention. Let's hope we are able to have some peace in that situation, so that people can sit at the table and then we can have cool heads. But ultimately, we also need to deal with the issues of terrorism, because my fear is not just what is happening now. My fear is what we have seen in the past, how the leftover of terrorism and war is destroying West Africa particularly, because most of the terrorist activities are in West Africa now. We in the fishing industry are faced with a major challenge of pirates. And how do pirates come? Because they have arms with them. And that's how come they are able to hijack our vessel. So it's not like it is too far away from us. It may be Israel and Palestine, but it's still very, very close to us, right, because of the ease with which we cross borders. Things that may happen somewhere, and you say, well, for this one, I don't really care because it is not me, it has nothing to do with me. It may be you. We travel so easily, and you know, at some point, it's gotten to a point where Israel has become more like a point for pilgrimage. So you have a lot of Ghanaians and other people going to Israel to pray. Our sitting president was at one point, was in Israel. Assuming
even the stone for the National Cathedral was imported.
Yeah. So assuming at the time he was praying in Israel, and some people dropped a bomb, you can imagine. So you may say, well, I don't really care, but an important Ghanaian may have lost his life as a result of this. So we as people not living in the world need to show concern, and we need a global leadership to be able to sit and say, look, enough is enough. Can we have some peace? Can we sit and talk?
Right.
Can we talk as rational people, and whatever the situation is, is it possible for us to resolve it? Is it possible for Israel and Palestine to live in peace and at least have some agreement? And can they jointly have a way of fighting acts of terrorists like the Hamas and other groups that may be coming up, in order that innocent people will go about their life normal.
Right. Thank you very much. But Honorable Yunusa, I want to find out from you. You're a lawyer, and I'm sure you are following the proceedings at the ICJ.
Yes.
What would be the impact of the ruling, even if it goes in favor of Palestine?
The impact would be that some people who are declared to have committed genocide will then have international warrants issued for their arrest. The Hague will then have jurisdiction over their trial, and they can then be arrested either in Israel or outside Israel. If they try to run away from international justice, they will declare fugitives, and then wherever they are found, they are arrested. And when they are arrested, they are sent to the International Court of Human Rights, and they are dealt with. They are tried and punished for their offense. Now, it is important for us to understand that the whole import of the criminal justice system is to send a message that impunity will not be tolerated, that people must be accountable for their actions. And so, while still fighting Hamas and destroying Palestine, the Hague is proceeding on the basis of the evidence that they are gathering to begin to look at the case, and that the import of that is to send a clear signal to those prosecuting the war in Israel that is the real likelihood of them being held accountable for crimes against humanity. And so if they were acting with impunity, they will apply the brakes. Okay, and those who have not joined the war yet must stop joining the war. So that is the import. But clearly, Israel is a signatory, and South Africa is a signatory, and Israel has obligations under the treaty establishing the International Court of Human Rights to obey the declaratory judgments that they will make.
How effective may that ruling be, especially when you have superpowers like the United States and co in Israel's corner?
Well, the United States will continue to be in Israel's corner insofar as Israel is not pronounced guilty. When Israel is pronounced guilty, nobody can step into the shoes of Israel to take the punishment. And even though the judgment will target states, it deals with individuals. Okay? And it is not a defense to say that you were defending your state or you were acting for and on behalf of the state, which allowed you to engage in that impunity. And you know the Nuremberg trials. Nuremberg trials establish a clear principle in criminal jurisprudence that acting for or on behalf of the state is not a defense in crimes against humanity. Okay, so you have no obligation to obey an unlawful order. Okay, so clearly, the United States can continue to be in their corner, but where if the international court pronounces Israel guilty of some acts that contravene the status of the United Nations and the Hague, then those persons, and clearly identifies those persons as being behind them, those persons cannot rely on the support of the United Nations to escape any punishment.
Any punishment, right. Elvis has just joined us. Good morning, Mr. Bota. I trust you're fine. Yeah.
I haven't seen my daddy in a while, and I'm doing so for the first time in the new year, I'm sure. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I've listened to you. Wherever I am in the north, I listen to you.
Oh, I see.
I make time to listen to Pan Africa. And I listen to you.
I keep learning. I keep learning.
I listen to you.
Good morning, sir. And good meeting you too.
Nice to meet you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, sir.
That's an international fisherman.
So I hear.
I didn't say that.
I'm a very ordinary fisherman.
I didn't say that.
He's an ordinary fisherman with a swag.
I didn't say that.
With international taste.
Yes.
But I'll go to Hague. I'll go to Hague.
With this matter. The Hague must hear this.
Right. So we have been having conversations in relation still to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think it was about a week ago that it entered its 100th day, and we are learning of still some strikes in the city of Gaza. Your thoughts?
Unfortunate. No person in this world in his right thinking faculties will be proud of the situations we are witnessing in the matter of Israel and Gaza. And from the outset, let me associate myself fully with the conversations already tabled here by my father and uncle. And I just want to say that when it comes to issues of security risk, okay, those who die as a result of stray bullets mostly constitute a chunk of the casualties than even those who are real targets. Now, the world cannot be a jungle where our interaction as humans is devoid of common sense and is devoid of rules and regulations. And it is in this light, and noticing particularly that we cannot achieve global goals of peace, stability, and sustainability in terms of development, both human, social, and infrastructural, if we continue to act in ways that undermine the capacity of states to guarantee livelihoods and to guarantee the peace and security of people. And so it is for this reason that everything, all right, is under the dictatorship of law. The law is the only legitimate dictator. And aside the law, no other person, actor or state can assume a role that is higher than the position of the law. And that same principle applies also even in armed conflicts. That is why we have the law of armed conflicts, otherwise known as international humanitarian law. So this body of law and the principles therein stipulates what constitutes acceptable conduct, even in the conduct of hostilities. Okay, what pertains to combatants who are actively participating in hostilities, what pertains to civilians. And when we talk about civilians, then we are moving into the realms of human rights, international human rights, and what may constitute an appropriate humanitarian action, whereupon the law grants legitimacy to protecting lives. So clearly, even in times of war, there are rules, there are customs, there are norms, there are regulations that must be complied with. Failure to do so by either parties in the conduct of hostility have got its own repercussions under international law. And it is essentially what my father sought to explain when you posed to him a question in respect of what the potential effect of South Africa's suit of genocidal claims could be on Israel in the event of culpability. You see, so the law is clear, and the ICJ may at first instance try to make an analysis of the evidence placed by South Africa in respect of whether or not Israel have contravened with any of the provisions enshrined in the domain of international criminal law and justice. And so we know the parameters against which crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide are measured. The standard of proof is there. So it is simply just opposing the evidence that will be exhibited or that have been already put in the petition against those standards. Then they can be able to determine, so in the face of the defenses Israel will put up, to make a decision on the matter. And already, fortunately, both countries are signatories to the law establishing the International Criminal, the International Court of Justice. Both are. And so Israel have actually already entered their defense on the matter Israel have not refused to do that. They have entered their defense on the matter. As to whether they will be able to justify factually why they are doing what they are doing is one thing, and as to whether they will be able to justify that they have not breached any human rights of the people of Gaza is another. Like Daddy explained, in armed conflict, okay, armed aggression cannot be a substitute for state defense, especially for a country or a state that is at the instance of attacking the other. You see, the essence of this whole thing is to make sure that even the weak is immune and given fair protection under the law. So this is where the conversation will be. For me, seated at where I am, I think that South Africa have taken matters to an extent that should not be tolerated by the international community. But then you see, your question as to whether the effectiveness of the judgment raises the question of the potency of international law as against, okay, as against the principles of state realism. When it comes to realism, the theory is espoused in a manner that so suggests that the interest of the state is paramount. Its national interest supersedes any other thing under the sun. And that is essentially the angle Israel is hiding. Now, where there is the realist play, then you also expect that the geopolitical dynamics and the geostrategic elements will be imbued into the whole scenario. And that is the devil's advocate. And it is essentially what America, really, which never supports anything good under the sun, have found themselves doing. I don't understand Biden at all, and his position on this issue and its escalation seem to have corroborated my fear about a certain age when it comes to national leadership. You come to Africa and you realize that we've got a lot of mess arising from old men who should be minding their business whilst waiting for death. Look at our own situation in Ghana. Some of the decisions clearly are completely irrational, and you cannot divorce them from the confused state of mind of people who have hit a certain age order. The president of the republic is almost 80. The chief of staff is almost 80. Advisors like yourself are almost there. Tell me the level of activity in terms of the logic required to enhance livelihoods when it comes to policy, issues. And you go to, we've seen how Mugabe was a good leader until age made him something else. And now, every funny quote you make and you associate it with Mugabe's stance. It was age that did that to him. Are you understanding what I'm talking about? Today, have you seen Yoweri Museveni? Yoweri Museveni, I used to like him, but lately, can you imagine what is happening? Then the other one who went and urinated during a parade, the South Sudanese president, went to urinate before the international community. Whilst the anthem was on, he just urinated. What did that to him? Age and its associated weaknesses. It's an honor to be old, and we honor them. But please, when they are aging and notice that the age is having a toll on decisions that have to do with the masses, they should advise themselves. And I just used to think that this was a particular issue peculiar to our continent. But Biden have proven that America is capable of actually suffering the deficiencies of age in national leadership. Questioning the logic of retirement. How come that in civil service, once you hit 60, you are deemed not strong and mentally effective for work and productivity? And yet, 70-year-old men are capable of ruling the whole nation. Are you getting what I'm talking about here? The various companies and entities and departments within the state cannot be manned by people 60 years and above in most of the cases. except in very specific scenarios, and those are few. But the entire corporate Ghana can be led by a crop of 70 and near 80 years old. There is a fundamental lack of understanding, and it doesn't make sense. So those are the kind of issues. So the political bit of the conflict far outweighs the legal dimensions of it. Now, I have always stated that those who have propounded the theory of democracy and have taken pride in actually secretizing any situation that seem to be at variance with what they have established as principles of democracy or pillars of a democratic dispensation are the worst offenders of democracy. And entities like the United Nations, who are very much so fueling this agenda by the countries of the core, have only proven to be the most undemocratic institution in the world. The UN is completely very undemocratic. From its structures and particularly the composition of the Security Council, you realize that there is a complete dictatorial tendency of that body, and few countries, just because of their military, economic, and political might, okay, are deemed as being sensible than the rest of the countries, especially in Africa, in Asia. In Africa alone, we are more than 1.2 billion in population. And you know what the situation is in Asia. Yet, the few people in Europe, which any day you can, after a good bottle of wine, can urinate around the whole Europe, okay, are deemed, together with those at the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean, wiser than the rest of the over 3 billion people of the world? Is that what the UN is telling us? If that system and that particular framework of international and global governance persists, then you can have the kind of impunity happening in Gaza happening. What? If I was president of a nuclear nation, I would have finished Israel by now. I'm telling you. I would have taken it upon me. Let's all go that way and create an anarchical system. The UN is still silent. The few trailers, when they give a humanitarian gap, the few trailers that goes in there, do they go in with drinking water? Do they go in with drinking water? They only go in with few tins of sardines. And in some corners, others are seeking to trivialize the conflict to religious bigotry. How can we live in a dispensation of, international hypocrisy? So we don't have a problem in the case of Israel and Gaza. We have a problem with America. The US are up to their usual. So let us see how it goes. But I won't be surprised if at the end of the day, the ICJ will not have the guts, even when a case is established, to lift what may be the veil of state, to directly handpick the perpetrators who have gotten both powers of state and legal, mandates to protect the lives of ordinary people. The ICJ may just not be able to do so, because when it comes to the particular issue of genocide, unless otherwise the law have changed, what I know, even in recent research, is that the ICJ actually does not have enforcement powers, much as it may make significant changes, or inputs to the Genocide Convention. Now, conventions in the strict sense are not enforceable laws.
Thank you very much, Elvis Bota. Now, away from Israel and their shenanigans, let's come back to Ghana. The Member of Parliament for the Akimi Boakwa South constituency, Samuel Atachia, has made some statements that are very, very interesting. He's admonishing the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, to resign to save himself and the NPP government. That's, according to him, would give him some respite. You're looking at the attacks, in his own words, the way people have been attacking him and blaming him for our economic woes. He feels that it would be apropos for him to just say, look, I've had enough. Let me just resign. And heed to the calls of the over 80 MPs initially who wanted to see the back of him. Remember, I think it was in 2022, in the dying embers of 2022, that those calls came for him to resign, NPP MPs, and the president negotiated with these MPs and told them that, look, I understand your frustrations, but we are in the middle of an IMF negotiation. Why not allow him complete that negotiation? Why not allow him also read the 2023 budget? Then we'll see to that. It's been dead silence after that. It almost appears to be a forgotten issue. I don't know particularly why Honorable Atachia has decided to restoke the fire. Maybe with just a few months to election 2024, Ken Ofori-Atta may resign, though I do not see that happening. But I'm going to start the conversation with Honorable Yunus Hussein. I'm sure he's written a lot of things down and would want to share with us.
Actually, I don't know what has motivated Honorable Atachia to make this call at this time. Ken Ofori-Atta and the situation of the MPP is irredeemably bad. Their performance has been inexcusably disastrous. So
the choice of this word is the best you've done to be charitable.
Exactly.
Yes. because you see, and for him to making this call so late in the day, you simply do not understand what has motivated him to do that. Some have said that he's doing that now because, he was a minister. They are from two rival gates in the Achim area. He and the minister. Some say that the finance minister and his cohorts were largely responsible for the demotion of Atachia.
Wow.
Atachia was the person who succeeded Nana Akufo-Addo when he stepped down from the MPship to contest the flag bearer of the MPP. And they're of the larger family, they're from the same family. But in the family, they are of different strands. And Atachia has been known since his removal as the minister for, was it Works and Housing that he was? He's never forgiven the Ken Ofori-Atta and some I don't want to mention because his name has not come out. We hear a lot of things when we sit down. But well, it doesn't come to us as a surprise at all. You see, Nana Akufo-Addo himself is an unmitigated disaster. Convince all of us, and my nephew, brother, and son, Buta, also was convinced that he was the best thing that could happen to Ghana. Many people thought that the vibes that he was emitting were so important for the total overhaul of the country and government that he needed to be put in office. Not knowing that he was a disaster waiting to happen. And just like Boris Yeltsin of Russia, we were convinced that this was the man who ought to be the leader. In fact, just 2 days ago, a governance professor, and he taught me, Kwesi Jonah, said, well, his style, Nana Akufo-Addo's style of governance is disastrous, it's terrible. Many people are now passing verdict on him. To single the whole problem to Ken Ofori-Atta probably is an understatement. Nobody no minister, no appointee in this government, this MPP government, has been working to advance the interests of the country. They've been working to advance their own interests. But let's go down there so that Ghanaians can follow us in this debate. Ken Ofori-Atta is the son of Jones Ofori-Atta, no so? Ofori-Atta and J.B. Danko were pals, no so? Jones Ofori-Atta was once upon a time a finance minister, no so? His son, so that relationship, when we say this is a family and friends government, people don't understand. That relationship has historical antecedents. So the Nana Akufo-Addo is not going to tamper with it. I mean, this man can cry blood. He won't tamper, he won't do anything about it. It is something his father bequeathed to him. And he intends to see it to the end. It's not Ghana. It is their family. So he won't do anything about it. If not, how can 90 MPs of your government, your party, in parliament, pass a vote of no confidence, and they are 90 out of 137?
They're from the majority.
If we were practicing a parliamentary democracy, that would have resulted in the fall of the government. The only reason why this government did not fall is because we are practicing a presidential system. The president derives his mandate from the people. But be left in no doubt that that was a vote of confidence, or a vote of no confidence in the decision of the president to continue to maintain Ken Ofori-Atta in office. 90 MPs questioned the decision of the president. What was the response of the president? Okay. So, wait, I appreciate what you are saying, but wait. I want him to negotiate with the IMF, and when he finishes, I will sack him. The president knew that the IMF negotiation will take forever. I will not still negotiating with IMF.
Yeah.
So his initial reason for keeping him in office is still valid.
It's still legitimate, yeah.
I remember I said that thing once. I said it, I made the analysis here.
It's still valid. So I mean, he just showed them that they were dumb MPs who didn't know what they were about, and then he dribbled them. Maybe they're good. Yeah, we have just concluded the first tranche,
yeah,
and then we are looking at the second tranche. We have just been reported that we are finished with the external creditors. We are still waiting for the third and fourth tranches. Yeah, we are still going to be dealing with the IMF, and we'll deal with the IMF till 2025.
Yeah.
So he's going to be in office till they are voted out of office.
Yeah.
Now, the second thing that happened to Ken Ofori-Atta, and for the first time in the history of this country, the provisions of the Constitution were invoked against him. The first time, never in the history of the Fourth Republic, has a Minister of State been subjected to impeachment proceedings. Never. So Parliament itself, at a point, thought that the only way to remove the minister was to impeach him, because he has brought his office into disrepute. And the reported matters, they simply, but what did we say? Again, those committee members who were selected by the majority side to sit on the committee were whipped into line, and they turned into his defense attorneys at the committee meeting. And so after the committee meeting, one of them has been rewarded, no so?
With a ministerial
appointment. So again, if you don't know that Nana Akufo-Addo won't do anything, that is an example that Nana Akufo-Addo won't do anything. Hey, you remember Mpiene? He said that if we want to save ourselves from further embarrassment, the Minister of Finance must go. Kwame Mpieni, the renowned economist.
Yeah.
What is the minister's answer to Kwame Mpieni? He said he got us there in the first place, so he will get us out. You remember? Impunity of the highest level. So the minister has virtually told us as a people that nobody can remove him except Nana Akufo-Addo, and Nana Akufo-Addo will not remove him. So he will get us out. Even before that, even before all this, when the signs were so apparent, so clear, and my kudos to the Dr. Asibe Yeboah, very early in the day, he said, look, the way the economy is going, the way our finances are going, he was not part of government. In fact, the government, Nana Akufo-Addo himself sponsored somebody against him in his constituency, New Japan, and they removed him. You know that? A sitting member of parliament was there. The president goes to that Kofredua, New Japan area, and holds a meeting in the house of the then chief of the Free Zones Board, preparing him to unseat Nana, Dr. Asibe Yeboah, who was in parliament and who was doing wonderful. It's your party, they don't need, nobody needs to die.
He was the chair of the finance committee.
Committee doing good work for the party.
Nobody needs to die for this.
Nobody needs to die for the MPP. If you are living in illusion, thinking that these people, no, nobody needs to die for him, they only know they are those. I mean, it is not about the party, it's about them. And so they removed him. He said as chairman of the finance committee, he said it publicly, not in parliament, that in his view, with the state of the economy at that time, and that time it was even better, that the only solution was for us to go to the IMF. This finance minister said over his dead body.
And backed it with quotations from the Bible.
He backed it with quotations. So it is said that when the president announced that we were going to IMF, it was at his blood side. That should tell you the extent to which the president fears or respects whichever way you want the finance minister. You see, so clearly we are in a difficult situation. We are in between the devil and the deep blue sea. Look, whether we want it, like it or not, we are stuck with Kenoforiata, and we are stuck with the irredeemably bad style of government of the Nana Akufo-Addo and his people. You know, remember Kosichi Dakwa? He's not a chief.
Chief now, yeah.
He's not a chief. You remember his viral videos?
Yeah.
Of people thinking that we are fools.
Yeah.
And that you can contract loans and benefit from those loans. Who was he talking about? In Singapore today, a minister of state, a cabinet minister, is being tried for corruption. Not that he received fiscal cash, but a company that was intended to invest in Singapore had paid hotel bills and paid for airfares for that minister, totaling $120,000. He's resigned already and he's facing prosecution. He faces 7 years in jail. In this country,
For $120,000.
in this country, not 100, millions of dollars have been found under the bed of a minister. For $120,000.
Wow.
A secretary in the Jubilee House has lost $100,000 to thieves. Nothing. No one has questioned a first or second year lawyer. I mean years of practice of a lawyer had $100,000 stolen from the house. No one has questioned. The special prosecutor's attention has not been drawn to that. So we really have a problem. A minister, who will sack the minister? Do you know where the money, the SML money was going? Do you know the connection between the SML and Okurata?
Interesting.
Have you studied the organogram of the GRA and the placement of the people and tied it to the SML contract? Who is the deputy commissioner in charge of petroleum at the GRA? And where does it come from? You will get the nexus if you do the analysis carefully. Carefully. We are not dumb. It's unfortunate Atachia is pursuing this because it will yield any results. It won't. Because Nana Akufo-Addo is settled in his mind.
You should have supported me when I started talking.
I supported you, but we knew it will yield any results. So that's why we didn't drag you. Because, and then you go and sit down and say that and pretend not to know of the existence of an autopsy report of Atta Mills. You go and sit down, people come, and you pretend not to know the president. Meanwhile, people say that you are prone to sleeping at international conferences because you are suffering from an ailment and you are taking drugs, and the after effect of the drugs makes you sleep. Can the president publish his medical reports for us to know whether what people are saying is true? Will he do that? So please, for me, it's just we're just saddled with a government and appointees who simply are pursuing their own agenda, have become too rich overnight, are flaunting their wealth with impunity, and nothing can be done to them. Crash this country, appointed a Bank of Ghana governor who, with their recourse to the law, printed so much money that took inflation to 54.1%. As international fishermen, were you then selling your fish at a profit?
If I tell you what we are doing now, you'll be surprised. Businesses are struggling.
The businesses are collapsing. They are collapsing. And so, yeah, it's a good call. It's a good call. But we'll wait to see. But whether Kedoforata goes or not, you see, it's too late in the day that you don't even know whether to applaud Atachia for his bravery or to just resign yourself to suffer the pain of Oforata's mismanagement and recklessness and Nana Akufo-Addo's misgovernment. Because if anybody is appointed to that office, and what did the president say? Talking about appointment to that office, what did he say? When the president had opportunity to address Ghanaians, he said that the call to change Kedoforata was being made by people who were looking for what?
Jobless people.
Jobless people.
Yeah. Who are envious.
Who are envious. So the president had already offered a defense of the man. My brother, we are in trouble. We are in deep trouble. Deep trouble. Do you know why we are in the situation that we are? Because we have a president who can never act. Just knows how to talk and pretend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Yunusa Hussaini. Very well said. Let me come to you, Richard.
Well, what else will I say? Except that I think I understand Atachia from a very different angle from where Honorable is looking at it. From what I read and heard, it was more like saying people are saying you are the problem. And so government is becoming unpopular because of you. And so if government is becoming unpopular because of you, then resign. That's different from the call from the 19 members of parliament. Within, they made a case that we have problems in our constituencies, and our constituents feel that the Honorable Minister for Finance is not performing. And so we want him out. But this one says, resign and save the government, because the woes of the government is as a result of your performance. And so, or is perceived to be as a result of your performance. So in that case, Honorable Atachan is not saying that he's not performing. He's only saying that you are creating a perception, and that perception is making us unpopular, and that will make it difficult for us to be retained to power. So resign now, so that at least we can manage what is left, and then we will see if we will come back to power. So it's not that bold call that you are thinking. It is more of a damage control call to manage the situation, because that is making all of them uncomfortable. And so that's how I understand it. We have a challenge as a country. We can't run away from that fact. We have a challenge because I'm a business person. I do business directly. And you know, I always applaud Honorable Marcus Biyebua, because he saved our business at some point. I remember in 2019 when the ministry imposed over 300% increase in our license fees. Then we were paying $30 per GRT. And when we say $30 per GRT, the weight of the vessel is a GRT, gross registered weight. And so for each way, so if my vessel is 1,000 GRT, we're paying $35. Then I was paying $35,000 every year for my fishing license. Then it was $5,000. Yes. Then it was increased to $200 per GRT in 2019. And it quickly went through Parliament. It got to the plenary. I was fortunate to have very good relations with some people. So one member of Parliament called me and said, Richard, have you agreed to this? So no, we're still talking about it. And he sent me the Hansard. So they raised the issue, it was set aside. So we went to meet with the Finance Committee, and then they stopped the process. Then in 2020, they smuggled it quickly. We went to meet with His Excellency the President, and finally we are paying $135 from $30. Yeah, $35. So there was an increase of $100 per GRT. So if my vessel was 35,000 gross tonnage, and I was paying $35,000, now I'm paying $135,000 every year for the license. We were not paying, and internationally, we don't pay for what we call ship stores. Ship stores are spare parts for the vessel because they are consumed on the vessel. Now we are paying between 25% to 35% in taxes for ship stores. Withholding tax for our expatriate is about 25%. So I have a real feel, practically, of what we are going through. The last time I told you, fish that were selling for 4,000 Ghana cedis in 2016, that's a ton of tuna, now sells for 22,000 Ghana cedis. Because we needed to do that in order to stay in business. We have 37 tuna vessels. 20 of them, we call them pole and line. All of them are collapsed. Only 4 are active today as we talk. Because you cannot break even. Between 60 and 70% of our cost of operation comes from fuel. And one vessel goes fishing, and my company buys close to $70,000 for fuel alone.
For what duration?
Up to between 2 weeks and 3 weeks, maximum 1 month. No, and we don't benefit from the premise situation where there are subsidies. Fuel has full tax components on them. So anytime and that's the kind of situation that's something that I have a practical feel.
Yeah.
And you see, virtually everything we do is tagged to the dollar, including buying water from the port. So the water I buy from the port is tagged to the dollar. So if the dollar goes up, I pay more. So you see, I'm a local fisherman and I'm struggling.
Meanwhile, when you said that up to now, you
see,
dollars.
because of IUU, there are a lot of reforms.
Yeah.
Now, the ILO is on us to improve the working conditions of our crew. Now, what may happen is that we'll have to get some of our crew out in order to be able to pay the crew what is demanded, because they want us to pay them at an international standard. Internationally, the situations are different, but the cost of operation, because if you are competing with a EU vessel, that is the maximum, I think we don't have up to 2,000 GLT vessel. EU has 2,500, 3,000 ton vessel. They engage less crew. They fish across the world, across the Atlantic, because they take licenses from so many other countries. So they'll be able to do some things better than we will be able to do. It's even difficult to replace our vessels. Look, some of our tuna vessels today are over 40 years old. Because you need to be able to break even.
40 years.
Yes.
That's older than me.
You need to be able to break even, to be able to, and it is becoming so difficult to even maintain them. And so a number of them have scrapped the vessels, but they cannot replace them. And so we are struggling. Tuna used to give us between $300 and $350 million annually in terms of foreign exchange. And in fact, where tuna was a leading non-traditional export in Ghana, we have fallen drastically because we are struggling. It's so difficult. So that's the practical feel of the situation we find ourselves in. We've engaged various stakeholders. We've engaged even all the way to the presidency. Look, we are dying, and if you want to fight IUU, one of the things you need to do is to make the cost of operation manageable.
Yes.
Because if I have to operate at an optimum cost, then you would expect that the person would employ all means to break even and stay in business. And so illegality and all those things may come up. Yeah. So when we discuss IUU, we also have to discuss the cost of operation, which is one of the reasons we have this challenge. So when it comes to the issue of the economy, from where I sit as a fisherman, I feel it so much. Fortunately, I will pass on the costs. Because when I put all my costs together, I can bear it. So I'll transfer the cost to the consumer. Unfortunately, also for us, we operate within the international trade, so we export into the EU market. So you cannot transfer the cost onto the EU. When I sell my tuna to the local market, I'll pile all the costs on them because they have no option. But when I'm selling into the EU market, it operates within the international framework, and so there are price controls and all of that. So I cannot sell it beyond a certain price threshold. And that is, for me, what I feel as an industry person, as a business person, that the economy is biting. It's biting so hard that if we don't take immediate steps, businesses will collapse. Businesses have collapsed. I know businesses in Tema that are no longer operational. And unfortunately, the tax bills keep piling up. And when the tax bills pile up and businesses can no longer hold it and can no longer transfer it to the consumer, then businesses have no option than to close down. I don't think this is the time to call for the Minister for Finance to resign, because why would he resign? At this stage, if he resigns, who takes over and from where? And what new would the person be able to do?
Yeah.
You get it. When the 90 members of parliament came out and they said, well, we don't have any more confidence in the minister. If we had skewed partisan politics and looked at issues from a nationalistic point of view, we probably may be able to hold the minister. So one of the reforms we need is the parliamentary system itself. The whip system in parliament gives the executive so much authority. The decision to appoint 50% of ministers from parliament also makes it difficult for parliamentarians to hold their ministers to account, because if you have 173 members of parliament, and you have about between 80 and 100 ministers, and say 50 to 60 of them are coming from parliament, in making a decision and taking a vote against a government policy, majority of those who are taking the vote will be in cabinet when those policies come up. So they can't come back to parliament and now vote against that decision. You get it? So probably when we are doing our reforms, we need to have a complete separation of power. So parliament stands as a standalone institution, and people are elected to do parliamentary work, and that's what they should do. Or if they are appointed into the executive, then they resign from parliament and concentrate on the executive work. Because it even makes the running of the ministries sometimes inefficient. Because there is something the minister may be doing something in the middle of something, and then there's a vote to be taken in parliament, especially in this type of hung parliament that you have. A minister may be speaking in the middle of the speech and may be called by the whip to stop whatever he's doing and rush to parliament because a vote may be taken and he needs all his members in parliament. It means that government work itself may not happen. And I think this parliament should give us reasons to look at reforms within the parliamentary system, look at the constitution again, and probably separate parliament completely from the executive. And one challenge we are having is also the judiciary. We need to, as much as possible, guarantee the independence of the judiciary and shield it completely from the political system. Because if you have an effective judiciary and you have an effective legislature, the executive would perform better, because you can hold the executive responsible. I was in Benin, and I saw what was happening in Benin, and I was like, wow, this is Benin. The development that was going. And recently we heard the president of Benin praising the Greek minister that Benin had become the leading cotton producer in Africa or so. Yeah. You get it. This is Benin. They're supposed to be a smaller economy than we are. People have argued that the francophone countries are tied to the weapon strings of France. But we have full independence on how we use our resources, because France dictates to them as to how they use their resources, and they are able to do things. Look at Senegal. Even Ivory Coast, they showed the beach road in Ivory Coast, and these are wonderful things they are doing. We have full control of our natural resources. Britain does not have anything to do with our natural resources. What do we do with it? We destroy our natural resources. And unfortunately, in doing our accounting, we do not account for the cost of destruction. Because if we are taking gold from water bodies, how much fish are we losing? And it is one of the reasons we are importing so much fish. Because people who used to live in clean waters can easily walk all the way from the north, get to a pond or a river, and they can get some fish, and life will go on. Now the fish importation bill is so huge because over 60% of our consumption today is imported. Because the inland contribution to our fishing is collapsed. Fish that migrate from the river into the ocean to spawn no longer does that. And the opposite also doesn't happen because we've destroyed nature. So do we even account for the cost
of
destruction of nature? And how much is that cost to GDP? Because if we are looking at livelihoods that are being lost as a result of what we are doing to nature and the environment, you would realize that there's so much that we are not doing right. And probably as a country, we need to get back and sit again and ask ourselves, where are we and where do we want to go? The truth is that the next government will suffer.
Yeah.
It will suffer so much that if it's not handled very well, it will become unpopular in no time. Because, well, the Ghanaian expectation is that you come in because you have what it takes to put the economy on its footing, repair the damage, and deal with all the associated challenges. So, whatever you inherit is not an issue. The issue is that once you are sworn in on the 7th of January as a president, you put your team together because when you wanted to be president, you knew what you wanted to do. And so do it and let's see. And 4 years is such a short time that it will be too difficult for any president to deal with the kind of carnage that we have now as a country. We hear the transport people want to increase their transport fare by 30%. Yeah. It means that the food on my table goes up. The cost of the food on my table goes up automatically. And it's sad, but that is the situation. To me, I understand that Thatcher's call differently. And it's a call to save the face of government because the finance minister is seen as non-performing. And that is the biggest problem the government have today. So let's deal with it. And so that at least we bring in a new person and usher in a new era and market that to the electorate. Right. And not because from where he sits is underperforming.
Right, thank you very much. Elvis.
Yes, we as a party, MPP, and by extension a government, have found ourselves between the rock and the hard place. Yeah. So I am not surprised at the level of confusion. We are in a state of confusion. It's a pity. I started speaking at some point, even as the sitting deputy national organizer of the NPP. You remember when I started speaking. So at least I'm consoled in the fact that nobody can say I speak the way I do because I did not get an appointment. No, I started speaking the truth whilst in office as deputy national organizer. And I will actually continue. I have resolved not to advise myself against that truth anytime soon. A society fails when a few stupid individuals actually think they are wiser than everyone else. I use the term unapologetic in a way as to describe that a fool is actually somebody who thinks he knows it all. Immediately you stop learning, you are stupid. And so there is no further point in seeking to analyze the basis for what we are witnessing. And what are we witnessing? The silly application of common sense. Silly application of common sense. Kennedy Ajapo was right, and he will be my mentor any day. Kennedy was right when he said that the MPP people were Kwasiafoɔ. He was correct. Kennedy is vindicated. Apart from Nkosi Asem, what else do you have as an explanation to what is happening? I was angry at the MPs who constituted the revolution against Ken Ofori-Atta. And KOD questioned me that, but you've been advocating for this. So if some 90 MPs are doing same, how come suddenly you are blasting them? I told them they will take money and run away from this matter, and that happened. They benefited, at least.
They said
we can mention two people who have benefited, and they constituted the core of the leadership that spearheaded this matter. So there is a compromise, as I anticipated. The problem with the NPP is that both the party and the government have found its way into the wrong hands. And any medicine man who is a producer of bitter pills runs away from his own medicine. Find out. When Kufuor was in power, led by now President Nana Akufo-Addo, said he admonished all of us, and we were in the university and becoming young admirers of politics then, that, look, Mr. Kufuor should be minded to keeping his what? His government. Whilst we keep, the rest of us, not the government, we keep our party. Today, the worst of the MPP is because they say President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo is now interested in keeping both government and what? And party. You remember recently the General Secretary had to actually express his frustration publicly by begging the President to at least do a reshuffling. You remember, Justin Kodia did it recently. My brother and friend did it, Justin Kodia, the General Secretary. But when I started saying these things in the early days, the NPP have made the whole world realize that as for Elvis Butter, he's an arrogant, disrespectful boy. Simple because you tell them the truth. But you know, I find consolation in our local adage. It is quite a profane statement, but I'll say it the way raw as it is. My father will support me, or if there are needs to do damage controls, he'll do it. But my local people say that if you discover truth in your mother's vagina and removes it with your penis, you haven't slept with her. Discovering the truth in the private part of your mother and removing it with your private part does not amount to sex. That is exactly the philosophy behind my kind of position with my own party and government, the NPP. Arrogance and impunity is why we are where we are. When IMF was the only guess, you have a finance minister with a penchant for using biblical quotations to justify his incompetence and ineptitude. The fact that he's a Yale or Columbia graduate doesn't make him the most intelligent economist.
Well, are they not failures in Columbia and distance?
Are you getting it? They shouldn't always come and let us just believe that studying in certain universities makes you a champion. I think that one of these days they should conduct exams between local graduates and so-called international graduates, and we'll write and see who will beat who. Because I don't understand what is happening. If you have studied in certain economies, you should only add on to good governance on the basis of what you have seen there. Instead of addressing these pertinent issues, let us drift from Ken Ofori-Atta and make a judgment on the one with the power to make or make an appointee.
Yeah.
So the problem is not Ken Ofori-Atta. The problem is Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, who is wrong in his leadership approach. Yeah. Very wrong. Yeah. Let me tell you, in the midst of very critical national issues, have you noticed the posture of the president lately? He is actually now rubbing in the face of communities and constituencies and people why he is deliberately subjecting them to the disadvantage. A case in focus. He found his way, one way or the other, to the Volta region. Which community was that? When the flooding happened. He went to Mepe.
Yeah.
and told them his coming there was actually a favor because they didn't vote for him and under normal circumstances he shouldn't have been there. As if after they never voted for him, they don't pay taxes. Meanwhile, the matter at hand is the deployment of tax or national revenues to make budgetary allocations to alleviate the concerns and livelihood challenges of your people. That passive approach of government to the woes of the victims of the Akosombo spillage made Ablakwa a better persona in solving problems than the entire presidency. Congratulations to Okujeto Ablakwa. I'm telling you, at least he has demonstrated that if given the opportunity, he can do better than at least the current administration in government, at least. Look at what the interventions he's making there. Yeah. The presidency could not leverage on the kind of advantages we have to marshal public-private partnership into managing this disaster. And that is why I think that NADMO is a disaster in need of management. Are you understanding my philosophy? NADMO, National Disaster Management Organization.
They are themselves a disaster.
They are themselves a disaster.
They need management.
In need of management. Do you understand me? He again found his way into telling the people of Ekonfi lately that certain things he could have done are not happening because they voted out his boy as MP.
When I heard that one in particular, I was shocked.
When I can't help it by dint of my training, okay, I cannot run away from the truth. When I come and say it and leave here, trouble for me. I don't know what the NPP wants me. If they don't want me to keep speaking this way, then let us apply some modicum of common sense. A scintilla of it will help tame people like me, else we'll talk any day, anytime. So, Akufo-Addo didn't have single respect, if not for any reason. And because of the late Professor John Evans Atta Mills, who was his childhood friend and football mate, should have been enough for you to even keep quiet.
To discourage even people from coming to your
I said something on Tumpani FM in Nadoli. Yeah. They were asking me why I have problems with some supposed council members of the Council of Elders of my party then, when I was parliamentary candidate against Alban Bagbin, the Speaker of Parliament. And I told, and ran into the 2020 election, and I told them that, look, these elders says, I don't respect. They said, yes. They said, oh, you don't take their advice. And they are elders, you should listen to them. I told Enoch, the host, that look, and it was a proverb I gave. You know what that means? No. Stupid people also grow old. The fact that you are old and you have gray hair may not necessarily mean you are wise. If you were stupid at age 10 and didn't do anything about it and maintain the status quo till age 90, you are just a stupid old man. Nobody should listen to you. So if I don't listen to some elders but listen to others, then you should understand that there's something I'm holding against their functional integrity as old men. But I think that this proverb or the kind of answer I gave have found expression in the happenings in Accra. I am quite convinced that it doesn't look like the wisdom that must accompany age has been the situation in the kind of observations we are making. So if tomorrow Akufo-Addo is late, Chebi should be denigrated by the next president who will pay total disrespect to you. No.
It doesn't happen that way.
But Atachia, and I'm concluding on this note, where was he? It doesn't matter the context of his conversation. It's a question of principle and time. Why speak now? when we started talking and we labeled arrogant, these very senior influential people who should have joined us in speaking at the time to right their wrongs kept quiet. You see, when you want to please everybody, when you want to, your trouble on earth starts when you want to be in the good books of everybody. Please, let's learn to offend some people. What we are talking and blaming Kenoforiata for is actually a manifestation of the general attitude of the majority of the appointees under the president. And the stem that holds all of this family and is not ready to fall apart anytime soon is the presidency and the president himself. You will quickly clear anybody who is accused. You will quickly make statements to undermine due processes that are being instigated against any of your appointees. You don't want to change any of them. At least you could take, if we all thought Ken was the problem, you could take him elsewhere. Nobody was even saying sack him completely. Take him to another ministry. What is the secret at the finance ministry that one person must say that we lose power? Are you understanding me? What at all is there in these ministries that we don't want them to, any appointee to get up? I don't know whether there's a covenant.
Decide the covenant.
I don't know whether there's a covenant I am not aware of.
Yeah, you are not aware of it.
Maybe he wants consistency.
I don't understand. What is consistency and stupidity? You want to be consistently foolish? Is that what you are telling me?
He wants consistency.
Please. We are not helping the nation. Look at the analysis he made as a business person. So those who are no longer in business, their children have changed schools. If your child was to be schooling abroad and you are paying in pounds and in dollars, it means that you may have to be looking for a local university. Do you know what that means? Do you know the number of people who have suffered stroke and are paralyzed as a result of the shock of the collapse of their businesses owing to bad governance? You see, unfortunately, in the midst of all of these things, the NDC is not doing the kind of campaign we expected, some of us expected them to do, to show that they are a better alternative if they take over. I keep talking about the third force. A time will come, we'll be compelled to make sure that comes to fruition. It looks as if Ghana is benefiting the same circumstances that got Rawlings to do the things he did. Yes. Ghana needs a very serious house cleaning. And I think we should start it from constitutional reforms. If we hang a few people in this country for wrongdoing, people will change. You just know the guy, he didn't have a Toyota Corolla of his own. Suddenly, 6 years in power, he's the owner of Land Cruisers and Range Rovers and Rolls Royce and real estate houses springing up everywhere.
6 years, 3 years.
Massa, and they say we shouldn't talk.
You say if you talk, you are jealous.
If you talk, you are jealous. How can I be? How can I be jealous?
What's his name?
When my private sweat has given me better assets than you, take away what you have had from politics, you will have nothing else apart from your national service certificate. They are the boys who are now giving all manner of titles, and they are so arrogant because they are able to pay journalists to publish what they want published about themselves.
Yeah. Right.
So unfortunately, we'll leave it there.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much.
Let Ghanaians decide in the elections what changes we can make.
I'll read a few messages. Our time is already up. Good morning to you all. The next president must arrest all corrupt officials and make sure he retrieves all money stolen back into the economy. And once your hands,
then that president must be needed.
Government must confiscate every property of the offender and give it to the state. And trust me, people will surely shun corruption. Thanks. You didn't mention your name. In fact, I can't wait to see Elvis become the president of Ghana. Kudos to Elvis. I need his contact for him to mentor me. Isaac from Zebila sent this one. Good morning, bless. Mr. Ofuriatta is the biggest problem to our economy, and he is, or his boss will pay for it soon. From Vincent Akagla, Volta region, Todome. Thank you so much for the message, and thank you for doing the watching as well. Good morning, blessed. To be charitable to Akufo-Addo is not only terrible and insensitive but clueless. The most clueless president we have had in the fourth Republic, taking into consideration the responsible remarks this time to the chiefs of Ekumfi, Ghanaians should not make the grievous mistake by voting for Bawumia, who can do nothing different from what they are doing now together. Nana Kakari from Techiman. Thank you, Nana, and good morning to the good people of Techiman. Thank you so much for doing the watching. This one here says, Dr. Bawumia is our next president coming 2024, and the good people of Ghana have made up their minds to vote massively for the NPP to meet the demands of Ghanaians this time around. Campaigns will be based on policies because of the vilification and insinuation. We have gone past through that. It's vote for NPP for more transformational and developmental projects. Regards to Honorable Kwabena Asamoah, the next to steer Asokwa, Honorable Abdul Razak, the hope of Frontier Akwa South, Honorable Kwesi Kwenin Bosompem, the next MP for Akem Swedru. Thank you so much for your message. Good morning to your viewers. Ghanaians are really in pain. Please do not call, I beg you. Just send messages. Good morning to your viewers. Ghanaians are really in pain. The center can no longer hold, and all things fall apart to the point that coconut, which used to be sold at the price of 50 pesos in 2016, is currently 5 cedis at my village. Kokonte bag, which used to be sold at the price of 75 Ghana cedis, is now 700 Ghana cedis. Where is the planting for food and jobs? May the Almighty Allah save Ghana from this cruel NPP administration. Honorable Chairman Peter Abaje, Asante Achem North NDC constituency Chairman. Thank you so much for your message. I'm from Boko. Help me get Elvis Bote's contact. Okay. This one here says Elvis has condemned the NPP even more than Honorable Yunus Afuseni has done. Okay.
I didn't condemn the NPP. I just spoke the truth.
Well, good morning to you and your panelists. Happy New Year to Honorable Yunus Afuseni and to Rich Star, and to also appeal to him to extend his generosity to the NDC in the Daboya Mankarigu constituency to help win back the seat from the NPP. From Mahama Asafo Musa. Right. Thank you. I'm sure Honorable Yunus Afuseni. Oh, he's an NDC person, so
no, it's not.
The person is an NDC person, so ostensibly he would want the seat returned to the exactly. But our time is up. I need to go. Let me send shouts to Afrik Men Couture. They are responsible for my apparel. Thank you so much, Afrik Men Couture. Locate them at Domi Pillar 2, just opposite the Bremerland Paradise Hotel. They did this for me. It's not expensive. You can get one yourself. Just call them. Their phone lines has been displayed on the screen. Just contact them, and then they'll do something similar for you. I want to thank you, Elvis Bota, for your time. Honorable Yunus Afuseni, a man for whom I have a lot of respect. He always graces our screens on Thursdays. When he's away, I still bother him. I still call him, Honorable, when would you be returning? Yesterday, he called me himself to tell me that I'm in town. I'll be available. Wow, put me on. Wow. And I just had to do that. And to the international fisherman. He says he's just a local fisherman, but all the money is quoted. $70,000, $35,000.
Those are the standards. He has no option than to pay him that.
Yes, you know. And special shouts to Mabna Rose doing the watching from the Wutu Senya West constituency. Thank you so much.
Why Mabna Rose?
I knew you were going to ask. I knew you were going to ask. I'll catch you same time tomorrow. Bye bye.